Welcome back, guys. So we're moving on to the pedals that actually make a special effect for the bass. And the first one of these is a pedal that's been a mainstay for me for absolutely ages, and this is the Boss OC-2 Octave pedal. Now these are actually discontinued. They were mass produced, so they're not hard to find, but they are quite popular, so sometimes the prices can get a little bit high on the second-hand market. You should be able to get some reasonable deals out there. Now, these were replaced by Boss with the OC-3 pedal, which is not a bad pedal, but the old OC-2 was an analog octaver, which means it's just got a really warm, round, wonderful sound, which is why I use the thing. The OC-3 is actually a digital pedal, and while it tries to simulate this sound, it doesn't quite get there, so I've never liked that one quite as much. A lot of octave pedals out on the market try and do a really clean low octave. They basically take what you're playing and simulate that an octave lower than what you're playing. And that's great, and that works really well. And a lot of them track better than the OC-2. A lot of them sound a lot cleaner than the OC-2. They're newer, so they're probably more reliable than the OC-2. But the thing is with this pedal is that the tone it produces is just something that doesn't seem to be reproduced in any other octave pedal. Now I say that, and I have to say that MXR have recently released in the last year or so the vintage bass octave, I believe it's called, as a very small pedal that's supposed to be a direct clone of an early OC-2 pedal. Now I haven't tried one of these, but I've heard that it's very, very, very good at that, so will be worth trying out. But this is something that I love using, and giving you a clean tone. It's a very gnarly pedal. And you can see from that that it's just got a real low end rumbling tone that's very reminiscent of sort of early bass synthesizers, analog synthesizers, and that's something that I personally love about it, and I know a lot of people that use these things love about it. And that's part of what I use it for. I don't tend to use it for gaining lower notes necessarily. I will occasionally hit a note with it that I don't have on the range of a 4-string bass, but I'll tend to use it more for getting that old school analog synthy vibe to a bass line. And that's very much the octave one down. It does go a second octave down if you wanted to explore into that territory, but I have found that that's a bit too low on the bass. I tend to run it with a little bit of the direct signal on, just over halfway there. If you turn that all the way off, you get the real synth sound out of it. And that's a great tone. I have considered getting a second one of these on the board just to have that set up and my normal tone with the direct signal in as well. But that might be a little overboard with the octave. We'll see. We'll wait and see. Now I actually have quite a few of these OC-2s. Some from the very early 80s. They came out in 1982, and I've got one from 82, 83, and 84. Those are the years where they actually read Octave on the front, and the casing changed colour a couple of times. This one's actually from the later 80s. I'm not sure of the exact year, but it's still a Japanese-made model. And then they moved production of these to Taiwan. Now the circuit essentially has stayed the same over the years, but I can definitely tell you that those early octavers, the early OC-2s, sound different from the later ones. The earliest one I've got is a very, very smooth octave down sound. The second one is kind of in between. The third one has a much more gnarly tone to it. This one is the later one. It is actually my favourite out of the four, five now. I've lost track. But this is my favourite of all the OC2s that I own. And it just sort of evens out all of those things. It's got that gnarly tone, but it's also got a smoothness to it, and it just works really well for me. An odd quirk of the early Japanese OC2s was that they still ran on a 9-volt battery, but if you're using a power supply, the later Taiwan models, there's a 9-volt 9-volt pedal, and you feed them a 9-volt input. That makes sense. The early Japanese ones, in order for this to run at 9 volts, you've got to feed it 12 volts. You put 12 volts in, it then converts that down to 9 volts inside the circuitry here. Why that makes sense, I don't know. But that's how it works. And there's actually a reason why I didn't use this pedal for quite a few years. I was feeding it 9 volts and it didn't work very well. Then I found out that little bit of trivia. Now it works really great. Now I've tried to wean myself off of these, but I can't find another Octave pedal that I like as much of them. So don't go out and buy them all, because I want more. I've sent messages on Twitter and Instagram, whatever other formats I could find to Boss. They have their Wazercraft recreations of old Boss pedals, and I've told them time and time again, and I know other people have, that they need to do an OC-2W reissue of these, and they still haven't, and they really need to. But in the meantime, I'm going to keep an eye out for any good deals of these on the second-hand market. So I recommend fully to you, go and try out any other Octave pedal. Don't buy the OC2s, because I want them. Thanks very much.